I'm so anti a million things I don't really know about.
I'm actually not.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm actually not.
The swastika's bad, but remember...
It was like Trump, and then... What? Talking intro to the pod here, episode 63. We're talking sleep training and getting kids adjusted from a crib to a bed. Michael's asking me for some tips because we've been here before. And
Color number 1 from Long Branch here on the air.
So my husband's not around. But yeah, you take it in steps. First, we were laying on the bed, then laying on the floor, then waiting by the door. But I tried to give agency, like, give me a thumbs up when you're ready. And then I sort of would force the agency, like, you have to tell me to go. You know, not I'm leaving, but you got to tell me. Fine, I'll wait by the door. I'll wait on the outside. I'll leave the door open. So it's like a very...
Agency.
Yeah.
I like that.
Agency's important. As long as the kids know that they're kind of deciding to do it.
I like to let them know. I like to let her know she's in charge. Is that what you're saying?
She's not in charge, but what's the word? Agency. Like, you can do it.
Right.
You can tell me, like, I'll stand here then, or not here. But you're kind of negotiating all the way through, as opposed to saying fine, whatever. Each in little mini doses. Like, well, I can't. You have your own bed. It's time for you to go to sleep. But you know what I'll do? I'll stay next to your bed. Okay, I can't stay next to your bed anymore because you have to get some sleep. But you know what? I'll stand by the door. And when you're ready, you can give me a thumbs up, and then I'll go. But I'll leave the door open. If you need me to leave the door open, you know.
The real issue with being in the bed is I just end up taking a nap till 9:30 p.m.
This is all normal, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens.
It's awful.
And then you wake up, and you're like, you basically
great.
put yourself to sleep. No, there's no more thick sleep than that. That's the best sleep in the world. But it ruins everything else.
Right.
You come down like
the
this.
entire next day is done.
You come down in the middle of the night is actually 9:30 p.m. and you're like, you go to REM sleep at 7 p.m. You're screwed. Yeah. That's when I stopped being able to like work late at night because it was like waking up in the middle of the night and trying to work as opposed to like going back to work. You know, it's pretty common falling asleep with the kid. You put the lights down, you lie down, keep it quiet, and then you're like, oh yeah. You fall asleep.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just a shock because she was a good sleeper, and now it's just another thing.
Yeah. It's.
But what's
my experience is most things are much more normal and universal than you think. So if it's happening to you, chances are it's probably happening to most people. That's what I've discovered in life.
Right. That's the internet's been good for that.
Yeah, you know, whenever every time you ever have like certain things that you're going through or whatever it is, and then like somebody and you think it's like the most specific thing, and like you'll hear like years later from somebody, oh my god, I used to blah, 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 and you'd be like, oh, this whole time I thought that was just like my thing or like a weird thing that I was anxious about, but it turns out to be fairly standard.
There's a whole Reddit on murder suicide. I didn't know that.
Yeah, exactly.
Why'd you want to talk today though? What's the press
emergency press conference? I figured there was a couple cool things that we don't discuss a lot, but I watched the Apple Worldwide Developers Conference.
I think it's right in our wheelhouse.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Specific technology? Yeah. So for some reason I was like, we've been trying to, in general, stay a little more topical and on top of current things in the podcast as opposed to just whatever we want to talk about. Sometimes it's nice to be on top of things as they're happening while they're fresh. And with the new AI tools, we've been able to do faster turnarounds, so we're putting it to the test, which is cool. Right. Did you happen to watch any of the Worldwide Developers Conference on Apple?
No, I did not, but I watched some of the response to it.
I mean, I basically go on and I'll watch like an 11-minute highlight of every announcement. Well,
you're a former Apple employee,
right? Exactly. So I mean, I have my credentials, so I can get access to the internet and watch. Marquise Brownlee, the tech reviewer, who's like an amazing tech reviewer guy on YouTube. I'm
not familiar with his work.
You've definitely seen it. Anytime you've seen an Apple review or a phone or something like that, he's like the best content creator on reviews. He sort of is the goat of tech reviews content. So I think I watched a video of him. He got to like beta test the latest new first generation product that Apple has announced, which is the Vision Pro. headset.
I think just Vision.
It's called the Vision.
Apple Vision.
It's called Vision Pro.
Called Vision Pro.
I think it's called Vision Pro. I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure it's called Vision Pro. There's just one more thing. Oh, so it's one of those moments where, like in true Apple fashion, it's so easy to be like, "What the hell?" And then Apple historically has always proved everybody wrong. When the iPad came out, I remember people were kind of laughing at it. When the iPhone was announced, it was kind of cool, but a lot of people, articles were written, no one will adapt to touch. Touch is not user-friendly. No one will use this. There's all this hate.
Right. I'll never give up my BlackBerry.
Yeah, all that crap. So I always hear that echo in my head when I see first-generation tech products. But for some reason, with VR, it looks like a big ski mask, the Vision Pro. Like you wear it like this, and wearables and stuff. There's a lot of like people who are saying this is the end of Apple, or Apple stock is dropping, and people, when will they learn people don't want to wear technology on their face? And I guess my main curiosities are, is this a step in the wrong direction or the right direction when it comes to technology? You know?
So I actually went to grad school for this type of thing. Like,
all right, well, I want to share my thoughts though. No, keep going. Yeah.
No. To answer your question, I went from 2014 to 2016 to a program at NYU in the art school. They have a really good art school, and I focused on VR. And at the time, everyone was saying, VR is on the precipice of taking over. It's just a matter of months. The old VR waves were silly when they all thought it was going to happen in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, but this is the thing. Facebook had just bought Oculus, and so I was building stuff in VR and going to these VR meetups and everything, and it just kind of didn't happen. And the whole time everyone was saying, well, as soon as Apple releases their headset, VR is going to happen. And Apple just never released it. And so those meetups just started dwindling, and fewer people showed up. And then crypto came up, and all the VR people suddenly were interested in crypto. And I'm sure all those crypto people now are just suddenly interested in AI. And so for whatever reason, Apple decided to delay that release of Apple Vision for 7 years. They probably knew what they were doing. And it feels like the product that they put out was probably very well thought out and very well timed. And I imagine it has something to do with AI. Thinking that now is the time that what they want to build, the applications are possible. But I think also a big challenge was the processing power. It was hard to build something that wasn't huge and tethered to a ceiling at the time. But now I think whatever they've come up with, it's possible to process all of it within like a sleek headset, which just wasn't possible a few years ago.
Well, one of the things that's interesting is that Apple always seems to not invent new technology per se, but find the thing about it that was the reason it wasn't working before and identify it, correct for that, and then you go, wow. In other words, there was probably touch before there was iPad, but it just wasn't smooth. It didn't have that buttery feel or the interface that was so easy to kind of play with and work with, and Apple perfected that experience. In this case with VR, it's more like augmented reality, and whenever you put on old Oculus stuff, it's kind of just like unpleasant. It's disorienting, it's clunky, it's heavy, and you're completely cut off. So you feel very uneasy and anxious. And what I saw from like just watching a little bit of reviews of the Vision device, that is the thing that I think Apple identified that they sort of cracked, was the transparency of the lens, where you can be in both worlds and have it fully integrated. It's more of you can have full VR, augmented reality, or whatever, and you don't need another switch with your hand. You're using your fingers and your eyes to navigate. And I thought
Ben Thompson from Stratechery described it as the thing that was so difficult to figure out, but now that someone's figured it out, the most obvious thing in the world, and we'll never go back.
Yeah,
like it's so obvious. You need to be able to see out of it. He got a demo, and he's like, yeah, of course. When you want to be able to see out of it, and you want people to see you. That's of course. but it's pretty brilliant. That was not. I never ever heard anybody bring that up.
Yeah.
Ever
both ways
until I saw it.
I haven't used it, but from what I understand from Marcus Brownlee's review, you navigate apps by looking at them. And it's so the apps appear in front of your face, and you can. He said, with incredible responsiveness, whatever app you're looking at gets highlighted, and then you just pinch the air with your fingers, and it. So Apple always focuses in on. I think what they were trying to develop for so many years is that magical feeling of like, wow, it's just working with how I want it to work. And then like you look at a search bar. He said you look at a search bar, and then it's ready to like it summons it, and it's ready for VO, and you can just talk. Right. So I was like, that's the area where all this other stuff was missing in the other ones, usability and thing. And like the creepy thing about the eyes thing is that apparently it doesn't actually show your eyes. It shows there's a camera inside that shows a projection of your eyes to the outside world. So he's like, imagine you're on a dark plane and someone goes up to you and you look up and the lights are dim, but you have these big bright eyes that would freak me. Hello. I don't know what that really will look like, but it seems closer to. It just revealed to me and highlighted the reason why other stuff never took off. Apple sort of is revealing that.
And just to explain a little bit what you're talking about, from what I read, is that the device is actually taking a video of your surroundings and playing them back to you on a video, but they feel real enough that it feels like you can actually see what's going on outside of the mask. So the mask isn't transparent, but it's playing you a video back to what you should be seeing, and then playing a video of your eyes to the people looking at you. So it feels like you're in the room, and your brain actually can't process the difference between the video and the actual room.
So you're looking at a camera feed of your surrounding.
Yeah, it's as if you're taking a video with your phone. You know, like when you look, the videos are awesome on your phone. Like they're good enough that like if you were inside of it, you would feel like you're actually in the room. Yeah, so I think that was the brilliant hop that they had.
That's really interesting. Right. That's what it is. You're not actually seeing through it, and it's but they've created this sort of recreation render of your eyes to the world and the world to you.
Right. So, I mean, you can imagine a situation where in a little while, all you get in the mail when you order a laptop is a keyboard and the goggles, and there's no screen anymore. You're just interacting with this completely AR.
Right. It's only got native Apple apps on it now, but eventually, the idea is like you could be working on Final Cut or something and then just pull the screen up, and if you want it to be bigger, you just pull it up and start working. It's all kind of exciting and cool. The question is putting something on your face constantly. But no one would have predicted, like, what is everyone going to want to hold a device and look down at it? We have the world around us, and we do that.
Yeah. So they're betting a little bit on loneliness, I think, whereas Meta is betting on social, where they're saying you're going to want to feel like you're in a space with other people, and Apple's saying not necessarily. You just want it to be awesome when you're there alone.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just like the philosophical question is, does this augmented reality, as opposed to being on a device, is a wearable that goes in front of your eyes, does that further connect you to the real world or further isolate you? Because this definitely, one of the biggest knocks on phones is that you're not engaged with the world. But if this is here and you're engaged, it's more integrated.
I think it's going to be like probably social media, where you could make the argument that how many billions of people have connected with people through social media and forged relationships unique to the internet, but that they wouldn't have had before. You know, who knows if you and me would have kept in touch as well without WhatsApp and Facebook and Instagram and all that. So there's a bit of an upside to it, but like probably the realistic downside is there'll be this sort of artificial engagement with the world, but in reality you're more and more disconnected from what's actually going on around you.
I get no. My question is in directionally, like to what degree is this a step? Is this closer to not being connected to the world because you're doing this versus put this down, put the headsets on, and then like you're surrounded by 3D renderings of all your friends in a room who you'd otherwise just be like texting or FaceTiming with, but now it's much more. The simulation is much more true to life.
Yeah, I actually kind of like welcome the chips in our brain because it's more immediate than looking down your phone all the time and using your fingers to, like, you think something and then Elon Musk said this. You think something and then you're just limited by how quickly your fingers can move. Like, why are we limiting it? Why not just think it and then the WhatsApp pops up?
Right.
Or you look at it in the WhatsApp, like, yeah, right. Like, why is it better to not be so completely?
I'm saying it's certainly distracting
maybe.
from real life experiences. But what's worse than this? Like, I'm not paying attention because I'm here. Versus, I see you and there's things going on around me, but I've just added to my environment. But at least I'm like looking out in some way. I don't know.
Yeah.
It seems like the obvious answer is like, no, you're putting on goggles and blocking your eyes from the world.
Yeah,
there's nothing worse.
I think
than
that's
that.
the truth.
Yeah,
I think that's the truth.
But what about for people you could never be in touch with? I have this like idea of like being able to put on a concert or hang out with people socially who are not around. But if you each created an environment with your headsets that matched, and then you're sitting there.
It's possible we're better off without them.
Oh,
You know, like friends who move away, they move away. You know,
you are.
It's natural though. It's natural to lose touch with people. You know,
Not necessarily. I mean, it's natural, but it might not be necessary.
yeah, it might not be necessary to stay in touch.
I guess if you don't value relationships, you don't.
No, but it's a specific. It's a unique relationship to WhatsApp, and so it's a WhatsApp relationship. It's a Facebook relationship. It's an Instagram relationship. It's not.
Or is it an improved?
It's not an in-person relationship.
It's not. But is it? There will always be in-person relationships. It doesn't supplement that, but does it? In other words, I feel like the world right now, if you're taking one positive of all the, everyone shits on social media all the time and constant distraction. But one obvious positive is that the world is more connected. When somebody moved to Israel or far away, they disappeared. And now there is a space for a relationship of sorts that didn't exist before, a new type of connectivity, which is what you're talking about before.
Well, is it a zero-sum game, especially when you get a little bit older and have more responsibilities? Is it because you're spending time on these distant relationships, you're not making new friends in your neighborhood, in your community?
Does one cancel out the other?
If you couldn't stay in touch with anyone from LA
Yeah.
or Israel, would you make a bigger effort to make friends where you are?
I don't
Would you
think
be more
so.
open to it?
I don't think so. You still need in-person relationships. If I think about it and I'm honest, I'm not like closed to new things or new relationships or new people because I'm like spending all this time like on FaceTimes all day and in Zoom calls with people. I'm actually not. Okay, I'm actually not. Like, I'm not doing those things, but like this podcast we're doing now could be effectively an immersive experience with a bunch of guests or a guest at a round table that looks and films, and you could watch it as if we did something in person, as opposed to this two-dimensional like experience.
Yeah,
like just
that'll be cool for.
And does that mean
Riverside?
Yeah, does that mean an in-person podcast is obsolete? I don't think so at all. You're adding. I think it's additive more than it is subtractive. You are imagine taking this whole Riverside call that we're doing, and we put it all around us. We sit in a room. We all like do environment matching in our headsets that we're and it pretty much feels pretty legit. Yeah. I don't know if it'll feel like the real thing, but it'll feel different than this. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it feels now more than ever that that's around the corner,
and that seems more exciting to me than scary. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not so scared about it.
But you don't care that much about anything.
It'll be a while though, because the headsets are I think $3,500 now.
I know that was.
It'll be a while before they're accessible to most people.
Did you?
It's a gimmick for a little while.
Did you see like there was a crowd reaction as like there was an audience watching the presentation, and people were tweeting crowd reacts to price. You know, Apple Vision Pro starts at $34.99, and everyone was like everybody. To me, it's a $800 of device. I can't understand what they're going for here.
Well, the market are VR nerds. You know, Apple nerds. Apple products always start off pretty expensive.
I know, but the biggest fail for me is that they're showing commercials of dads in their living room with their kids,
right,
hanging out, having fun, watching a movie, and I'm like. But you're gearing this towards businesses that want to try to use this. Like the price point is not a consumer price point. So I was like, what the hell was that? You just misdirected everybody to think everyone's going to get this for a Christmas present at $34.99. No, you know. So that was weird.
I wonder if people are clamoring now to like. I remember when mobile came out, we all knew a ton of people who were like creating mobile, like everyone was making an app. That was like that was like the startup. Wonder if there's going to be a clamor for these AR apps now on their new iOS.
Yeah, the Vision OS.
Vision OS, right?
Yeah, there is. There's going to be a developer kind of chase thing for it. The way there was no App Store originally on the first iPhone. It was just like a bunch of Apple apps. We forget.
Right.
There was no App Store.
Just thinking about Hopstop the other day. You think Hopstop is still going on?
What was that again?
It was a way to find subway directions.
That was excellent.
Imagine if there's like just a small group of people still hammering away at Hopstop,
Not giving up on their babies.
Yeah.
I'm telling you. It's like
here's what we do that Waze can't.
they're like, Nick, stop. Yeah, I'm curious because anyway, at the end of the day, I'm curious if this is a massive fail or if this is another Apple game-changing thing, because their history's been good with that. The question is,
I think.
Or is it more like an Apple Watch?
They have a pretty rich history of successful product launches. What do you mean another failed thing?
Or another failed? No, not another failed.
Oh, another failed, like Google Glass.
Yeah.
Well, right.
Or Apple Watch. I don't know. They don't announce numbers on Apple Watches, but not many people have them, right?
I know a lot of people with Apple Watches.
Really?
Yeah. I know. Yeah, for sure.
I guess for certain industries they're good. They don't seem
It's
standard.
great for if you're getting older. I know someone who they got a notification that their father fell.
Oh.
Like the watch could tell it was like a drop that was too quick.
Oh.
So they called them. He's like, I just did fall. I'm like, fine, but thank you.
Well, that's interesting.
It's a really
I wouldn't say it's a fail, but I don't feel like it's a standard of product the way like the iPhone is insane.
Right, it's not as ubiquitous, but and I don't think this will be ubiquitous for a very long time.
It can't be at that price.
The watch is also like an accessory.
Yeah. It can't be at that price. It cannot be.
No, I don't think it's meant to. I think if I was them, which I am in a lot of ways, I would you want to sell it to the hardcore people who aren't going to give you issues. Like they want it to work, and you work out the kinks, and then you make it better and better and faster until you can lower the price for. Yeah, and it's working well.
Seems like the strategy is we price it so high that only the pros and nerds and like competent tech people will use this, work out all the kinks that are inevitable because it's a new product before it's tested on a mass market, and everybody complains that nothing is working. You know?
It's also it's not so easy to make things cheaply. It takes time to figure that out.
Right.
They're not as good at making them yet, so they probably can't make. I mean, I'm sure they're making money on it, but it's harder to make them for cheaper.
Yeah. I'm just Anyway, it sparked my curiosity, and we shall see what happens. I can see it definitely looks like a first generation product, like it's a bulky thing. You could see like Vision 7 is like basically you can't even see it. It's like completely transparent. You don't even see it, or they're contact lenses. But there's one more thing. Oh,
I've been wearing them the whole time.
Yeah.
You have?
Yeah. Other subjects. The world is on fire.
A bit.
Leave it to Canada to get us to wear masks again.
Yeah. They got to get their climate under control over there.
I don't know what. It's one of those things I had no idea was going on, and then all of a sudden it's like, the wildfires. I was like, the wildfires.
Are people wearing masks?
No, but I mean, I would.
Probably should.
I would outside. It's actually palatably like awful. I've never seen this ever. It's like apocalyptic. It's yellow outside.
Yeah.
Makes me think we're in a simulation.
Yeah, why is that?
Because like ever since Kobe Bryant died, things have just been so strange, and the amount of unprecedented events that have happened one to the next, like in the span of a few years versus all the time I've lived before then, is so odd. I don't actually believe we live in a simulation, but it just is strikingly odd that all these random, weird, massive events of like cultural significance, public health significance, seem to have all been condensed into the last 3-4 years.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? Trump. I guess Trump winning in 2016. It was like Trump and then what? Like so many things that are hard to believe.
Trump winning made it feel like the the dials went the other way of like the thing you don't think is possible is going to happen.
That's
like,
why he's
Trump
such an
won,
inspiration. Yeah.
I remember like LeBron, I think, like they came back from like 3 games down or something. Like if I was betting, you would always bet against the thing that's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
For the last like several years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like COVID actually happening. Crazy.
No, yeah. There's been so many things where like Trump can't become president. That's never going to happen. Happens. COVID, there's not going to be, they're not going to shut down everything.
Right.
They did.
Right.
The fire in Canada doesn't affect us over here. It's not like the whole sky is going to go yellow and the air quality is going to like not be breathable. It is.
Well, it's also like the forces that were brewing for a long time were just coming to fruition. Like climate. I mean, whether you think climate change is caused by humans or not, it's the climate is changing, so things are going to start happening. Like there are going to be more fires and floods and immigrants. Like we've known that for a very long time.
Did you say fire, floods, and immigrants?
Yeah, because of like climate immigrants. Have you heard of
We've got to have Alex Epstein on to just clear your mind.
Yeah. No, well, does he say it's not happening, or he says it's not caused by humans?
He says it is not in any way catastrophic. To the extent that it is happening, it's very minor and very manageable. And what's much worse is getting off of fossil fuels and energy that allows us to have the standards of living and withstand a harsh climate in the modern world.
So what do you think when you look out the window now?
It's obviously harder for that to be an emotionally resonant argument when there's a natural disaster happening. The question is, historically, you'd have to ask yourself, is this unprecedented or does it feel unprecedented?
Right.
The question is, like, have there been, like hurricanes in Florida, have they gotten worse, or did we just start reporting on them more recently in the last decade? In other words, the 50 years before that, they were just as many hurricanes, but people didn't live in those areas yet, so we didn't report on them. There's a lot of questions beyond that initial instinct of, whoa, this all seems crazy. It must be because of this climate narrative that's true. Like there's a lot of the Florida one was a good example. I looked into that, and it was like there were a lot of areas. There's been population expansion. There's been areas that have been built up and cities built up. So now when there's a hurricane in those areas, which historically there's always been, we see it.
When you said you looked into it, what does that mean?
I listened to like Alex Epstein's response to that question about Florida, and anyone who's like has a counter narrative, because you know what, you look into it on the other side, it's one answer. It's climate change, climate change, climate change.
I just feel like he's gonna be like water up to his neck one day. He's like, it's not climate change. It's not climate change.
He makes a lot of points that are not so refutable. Like climate-related deaths are at an all-time low in history. Yeah. Climate-related deaths. His whole perspective on what the climate is.
I don't know.
In other words, the climate is not some like naturally safe environment that we make unsafe by industrializing. It's the opposite. The climate is naturally unsafe that we make safe by industrializing. And we use this technology to make an otherwise harsh climate safer. Air conditioning, heat, power, energy, all of those things. So
can it be both? That like it's kind of this weird conundrum where it is safer, but by making it safer, we've also made it more, warmer.
Sure.
And that has consequences.
It could be both, but I'm not convinced that it is both, because the historical track record of catastrophizing about the climate goes back since like the 70s. Then they've been talking about population collapse, famine. They've been saying it that every 20 years this is going to happen, and in fact those numbers don't pan out and have the opposite effect. We have more people, we have more resources, we have fewer climate-related deaths, we have a safer, cleaner environment than we've ever had before in general, and more countries are coming out of that. So when I hear that, I'm like, oh, interesting. There's always catastrophizing, and it's always based on these speculative models. And the question is, like, does it pan out? Did Al Gore's predictions in Inconvenient Truth come true? Not at all. So the question is, now that we're in a wildfire, the question is identifying the local catastrophes. What is causing that, and how do you deal with that? I don't know. That's an interesting question.
But the oceans are getting warmer. Like, there is more water in the ocean. There is, like, no?
Yeah, slightly, but I'm not.
Yeah, but a slight.
But the question is, does that lead to catastrophe? Inevitably. And I don't. That's what I'm saying. The argument that an Alex Epstein makes is not these things do occur. The question is like, if a bunch of scientists, if 97% of scientists agree climate change is real, what does that conclusively mean? Okay, that's like saying, that's like, he gives an example of vaccines. This is forgetting COVID and all the controversy around COVID. Vaccines in general. 97% of scientists agree that vaccines have side effects. And if they said that vaccines cause harm, now, like, they narrowly do in a lot of ways. There's side effects to vaccines. The question is, what benefit do they provide? And it's much, much more, and the harm is very manageable. Like, that's the idea. It's not that they don't possess these potential harms and that there isn't pollution to consider, externalities to consider, and mild warming. We're talking about like a percentage of a degree. And if you look at the climate record and different histories and things like that, it'll make you think twice about the narrative that's being pushed on you.
Mm. Interesting.
We need to have him on.
Yeah, we got to get him on.
But anybody who says it's not real, it's a hoax, is misinformed also, because that's not really what he's saying. He's saying that the humans have some effect, but it's. This
feels significant. I've never in my life experienced this before.
Yeah. So like when Texas had those freezing things, he spoke about that. He definitely has to. I'm sure he'll be on the news being asked this question. Yeah. And a lot of the answers always seem to boil down to like forest mismanagement. And a lot of the bureaucratic agencies in government that have totally mismanaged their responsibilities and have led to these wildfires. It's actually been the increased or the restrictions on development in the forest that have,
You know whose opinion about this I'd actually like to hear? Like RFK. That's why I think RFK has a real chance.
Uh-huh.
Like having heard him speak about vaccines and some of the way COVID was handled and some of the like corporate capture of politics. I really like.
Should we get him on?
He's doing everything. He just did Jordan B. Peterson's podcast.
Did he really?
Yeah, I think it was yesterday. It was like 580,000 views. People are.
What did he recently comment on though that I sent you? And I said, "Uh-oh, this is bad." I sent you something.
Oh, Israel. He said the guy from Pink, Roger Waters, is like
stay strong. He praised Roger Waters.
Listen, people are not. I kind of stopped. I kind of stopped cutting people. I kind of stopped cutting people off. What's the right word? Signing them off. Whatever. Like dismissing them.
Reducing them to.
Yeah, I would just be like, oh, not for me.
Threshold.
If they like criticize Israel. At this point, I'm a little like, it's so mainstream and popular. Like the same way I criticize Afghanistan and like the Taliban, like people criticize Israel. I don't really think it means they know everything about
Roger
it.
Waters dressed up like a Nazi and started shooting guns all over his stage and has a pig with a Jewish star on it.
I doubt. I'd be surprised if RFK knew about. If most people know about that, I know about that, and also like
he could be wrong.
If I didn't have a connection to Israel and I heard the narrative, I'd also be anti-Israel. Like without, I'm so anti a million things I don't really know about. So I'm just like, so true. Like I hope I don't like his Israel policy, and maybe for that reason he shouldn't be president. But for everything else,
but I'm just saying the amount of overt anti-Semitic imagery and propaganda at a Roger Waters show is really disturbing.
But who knows that?
What do you mean?
I'm like fairly fluent in pop culture and stuff. I didn't know if he has because the reason stuff at his concerts.
The reason
I just know he doesn't like Israel.
But the reason Roger Waters was in trouble in hot water was because he dressed up like a Nazi on stage and portrayed these things. And in the heat of that controversy, RFK tweeted at him, "Stay strong." It was the tweet.
Is that what happened?
Yeah, the tweet was that I sent you.
I didn't even.
You're so out of touch. That's what was going on. That's why he was more in the news.
The thing is, I'm not out of touch, so that it can't be that big of a story. Like,
you clearly didn't follow.
There's a corner of the internet where it's a huge story. It wasn't on my internet.
You didn't follow this story. That's all I'm saying. And then I sent you RFK's response praising Roger Waters in the heat of this controversy. That was the context. It wasn't a general endorsement of Waters. It was this.
All right.
And I was like, ugh. Now, I'm not going to...
That's not so cool. All right, fine. Yeah. Fine. I didn't realize.
That's what I'm saying. It was Roger Waters defending himself. And I get it, artistic expression, whatever, but the amount of, given his positions on Israel and his stuff that's portrayed at his concerts, of pigs floating in the air with Jewish stars on them, and then he dressed up like a Nazi, and and did this whole like portrayal, which is kind of eerie and
Is that
disturbing.
true?
100%.
It's pretty messed up.
I'm not.
He dressed like a Nazi? Why? What does dressing like a Nazi have to do with
You want his defense of it, or you want
his rights, his human rights like stances?
Because in his defense, he was trying to he was portraying like fascism in his show. Just look it up.
I don't think that's very nice at all.
Roger Waters.
I really don't. Well, did you see what the New York Times did about the swastika in the Ukrainian army?
What's that? They banned it?
No, they were.
This
basically
floats
saying,
at Roger Waters' show over the audience.
Oh, that's
Okay.
fucked up.
This is him with Linda Sarsour, just chilling like a villain.
Who's Linda Sarsour?
Okay, never mind. And this is from the show. But you can love RFK.
That's a bad look, RFK.
Look. Oh, here's an even clearer one. There it is.
I don't like that.
But Hey You, he
don't
played
like that.
he played Hey You, and it was sick.
Did you see the comments we got on our RFK clip?
Yeah. What were they?
People just like, they're like, maybe they're bots, but they're just like we acknowledged his voice. We made fun of it for a minute,
Yeah.
and then we talked for 7 minutes about how he's a really interesting candidate,
Yeah.
and we're excited to see what he has to say. And everyone's like, and the comments were just like, he's not anti-vax. How dare you make fun of his voice? You should really listen to him and give him a chance. Like they just like they just find what they want to say, write it, and then
It's
go
almost
away.
like
So
the
it's
hearing
so wild.
the hearing is selective. I said, I feel bad making
Yeah.
fun of his voice because it's a condition. We spoke about the
Exactly.
condition,
Yeah.
and then they just say, yeah.
Yeah, they're like, come on, guys, don't make fun of his voice. I'm like,
Everybody's
yeah,
voice
I know,
is a
that's what we said. Yeah,
I was sensitive
we agree
to
with you. What was I gonna say though? I just I forgot.
talking about-
Oh no, the New York Times. So the Ukrainian, some of the people on the front lines of the Ukrainian army are wearing not just swastikas, but like the insignias from the concentration camp guards and like some of the more like vicious units within the Nazi army. It's like they're wearing those patches on their uniforms, and so photographers would get them in pictures and then put them out, and then the Ukrainian government would like strip those photographers of their credentials, so they weren't allowed to take pictures anymore. So the New York Times had an article that like, it's a little complicated because we're supporting Ukraine, but there's clearly like some Nazis in it, and that's what Russia is saying about them. So like it's a little bit confusing. And then the article kind of went on to say like the swastika's bad, but remember, it used to be a Buddhist symbol, and not everyone who has a swastika really is trying to like promote Nazism. There's a lot of Ukrainian pride mixed into it, so like perhaps it's not as serious as we might think.
Wow.
And it was like, wow. Oh, really? You gotta push, you gotta vamp for the Ukraine right now.
For the same, it does baffle. It's baffling. The same publications that find racism everywhere where it doesn't exist on this one issue have staked their position in support for Ukraine and excusing anything that may throw that narrative off. I don't get that.
There's a really cool website I just discovered called Semaphore. Have you heard of it? By this guy Ben Smith, who was the editor-in-chief at BuzzFeed. He just wrote a book about all the social media news companies like Vice, BuzzFeed, Gawker. They've all gone out of business in the last couple of months.
Right.
He wrote this really cool book, but he has this site Semaphore, and it's kind of like in that moment where it's like sort of independent, where like they're not really like beholden to anyone, and like the news is really kind of short and brief and well done, and seems like pretty centrist and interesting. So they just had an article of like how all the different media companies are handling the fact that Ukraine doesn't want them to talk about how there's a Nazi problem, like the big picture of like not on Fox's side or CNN's side, but the fact that media exists and here's how all the different places are handling a particular narrative. So Semaphore is it's a cool website to
It's
check out.
covering how the media is covering.
Yeah, partly. Yeah. But like the fact that they would even do that, that's not the only thing they do, but the fact that they're even open to that type of thing just shows like
it's kind of what Crystal and Cigar do.
Side at the moment.
Or at least
it is, but
strive
you see
to
with
do.
Crystal and Cigar, they're more and more getting like
their own brand.
Boundaries on like Joe Rogan does something and they'll just put out a piece defending their friend Joe Rogan, which is like it's cool, but it's like
they're becoming
like
predictable.
A news show, yeah. Like what are you exactly?
Right.
Like,
remember when this first happened when we did our episode, Russia invaded Ukraine, and we're like, I don't know how it's going to happen because it seems so clear that there's the bad guys and the good guys. Yeah. I'm not putting out, I don't have a position on it. I'm ignorant about the issue a lot, but initially, obviously, all the world sympathies were with Ukraine, and I couldn't even fathom how that would change. Yeah. But here we are.
Put that in the column of things you never thought would happen.
Yeah, like there you go.
Trump winning, COVID, Russia invading Ukraine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it just makes you realize anything. The normalcy bias has been completely eviscerated. We used to have I think it's something called normalcy bias. I forget what it's called, but there's some kind of term in which everything happening the way it usually happens is what you think is going to happen. So like generally speaking, but there's been so many. That was another one, the Russia invading Ukraine. But now all the sympathies were with the Ukrainian people, and it just seems so obviously black and white, good and evil. And I'm not saying my opinion about it has changed, but it's certainly a more confusing narrative out there over like reasonable people are against funding Ukraine now. And this idea of we're responsible for, tempting them to join NATO and moving the border closer to Russia was a provocation. That's an argument now that's floated about that's not just made by crackpots. It's made by it's part of the reasonable discussion now. And you're like, oh, interesting. The line has shifted.
The line started shifting, I think, when it wasn't about Ukraine defending itself, but it was about like defending itself to the death and taking weapons and money in order to do that. I think that's where it started to shift. Like should you just broker a deal with Russia and avoid 100,000 people dying? Maybe, or should you like fight until everything's lost? Maybe, and that's where sides started getting taken.
I think the Nazi part too was like, for people.
Well, yeah, now even more so.
And just like that, it's not so. Well, I don't know, and it just seems like it's crazy that it's still going on too. But anyway, moving on. Yeah. Is there more?
No, go ahead.
I really like Vivek.
Yeah, I haven't given him a chance really since since our last conversation.
We didn't talk about him per se, but you're like on the RFK train for now. Good for you.
Well, to be honest, I just I heard Crystal and Cigar bash him, and that was the last. That's as much.
So you don't form your own opinions, only take theirs.
I don't have time to form my own
fine.
opinions.
But tell me, remember when Nachman on our episode said, "I'm in with Vivek." I've just been like
the Indian fella.
Remember you were like, "Do you watch Crystal and Cigar and Jetty?" He's like, "Start again." He's like, "Start again."
You know what show I like? It's called Boat Builders. They build boats.
I love that episode. By the way, so I want to hear their take on it. Tell me what you heard. But in general, my thing is, not only is he like a young guy, he's somebody who's like, he's like fresh blood in this and energy and all that kind of stuff. I know people like to say I'm the outsider. Everybody says that, but he's a smart, intelligent, and he's thought out a lot of his positions from like a political and philosophical place. I think he understands the issues in a way that most politicians that are running don't. They go based on like personality and charisma, and they don't really have a substantive understanding of the issues, and therefore they're easily cornered in gotcha questions and because they wonder what they're supposed to say, what their rehearsed line was supposed to be. Vivek has rehearsed lines too, but to me they're rooted in a real understanding of policy and issues, and I find that really refreshing. And the fact that he can really put his sentences together and present well. He's not afraid of questions that could make him look bad because he stands by them confidently. And I'm like, he's like that. Like the journalist will say, you don't think Russia's the top priority? I think it's a priority, but I don't think it's a top priority. Like he knows how to navigate the questions because clearly he's thought these through. And I'm like, this is nice.
Is America ready for a president who is a culture warrior, though? Who likes the culture war?
What?
He just strikes me as
what are you talking about? We had Donald Trump.
I know that was a joke.
Yeah. It was.
I was gonna.
Yeah.
maybe go
To
in
me,
a
that's
different
not his
direction
signature thing. His
there.
signature
That's
thing
not his
is.
signature there.
I think he, if anything, like DeSantis and people like that are trying to like go against the woke, and that's a part of what he talks about. Vivek goes for that. He doesn't shy away from it, but it's part of a much bigger platform and narrative that he's talking about that I think is like very intellectually holds a lot of water, and is said with confidence and understanding as opposed to just like canned, room-tested focus group responses. You know. That's why I like it.
Yeah, so the clip I saw from Crystal Cigar, because Cigar had him on his podcast with Marshall, and
Marshall.
you know Marshall. It's not obviously not Thurgood Marshall.
Okay.
Marshall something. He's really. I would love to talk to him.
Okay.
He seems awesome.
Okay.
And
Is it Marshall
very smart?
Marshall a co-host or a guest?
He's a co-host of the Realignment podcast, and he's on the show sometimes, like on Breaking Points.
Yeah.
He's also just like so calm, cool, and collected. You're just like afraid. I would be so afraid to debate with him.
Nice.
Anyway, but yeah, they were saying like he very much knows the culture war lines and is like trying to play those to jump off of and get attention for himself. And like he doesn't really have. He's more committed to that than he is to any other value. That's what they were saying. Maybe it's
That's
changed.
what they said. I thought that was their critique of him, because then they're not really listening to most of his stuff.
I think from the appearance, the interview they did with him, he seemed to be saying some inconsistent things with what his values are supposed to be in order to sort of sound the alarm that if you're on my side of this cultural debate, then vote for me. And so they were like pretty unimpressed with him. They were like kind of pissed at him actually. Maybe he pivoted. Maybe he changed a little bit.
Maybe Cigar, because they're both Indian. Are they both the same?
That
so
could,
he's
that
like,
could
you're out there repping for us,
100% be.
and he was just
Could 100%
had a
be.
bias towards going after someone he doesn't agree with. Is Cigar though more to the right than Crystal, or no?
Yeah. He's like you. He's sort of like a conservative, like in like not Trumpian, like not interested at all in the culture. We're more like free market, small government type of conservative. Yeah, that's his thing.
Well,
and then he kind of pretends to be a. He's like 27.
Cigar?
And he always talks about his like time as a reporter on the CIA.
Yes.
Like it's like, yeah, you worked for like a year and a
For a
half
summer.
as a reporter because you're only 27. Like how
summer.
long you didn't do that much before.
I didn't
you
realize he was 27.
He's under 30. He's under 30.
Oh, I see. Well, I'm throwing him with Vivek for now. If there's a guy,
All right.
because I just like the fact that he's kind of fearless in his sort of, he's willing to take positions that are historically, politically supercharged and controversial, but he just says it. And then when you just say it and just say, no, I stand by that. Like doubling down
Yeah.
from a pretend, then the audience goes, oh, all right, respect.
Better him than DeSantis. Like DeSantis, I just feel like is so committed to like there's us and you, like so committed to division. God, I really hope Trump just. I rather Trump than him, honestly.
Really?
Trump just did the smartest thing. Did you see what he did? He just kind of started saying like, well, what's with this woke thing? Everyone's obsessed with woke, which is like going at the heart of DeSantis's entire identity.
What does he say? I don't want to talk about woke. I don't want to discuss.
He's like, no. He's like, no one can define woke. No one even knows what woke is. Why don't we stop talking about woke? Which is basically saying, why don't we stop talking about DeSantis?
Oh, that's clever. DeSantis to me is also like classic sort of Romney syndrome, where like he can. I think he'd probably be a very good executive and he might be a better president than a candidate.
Well, you should
because
see
he is governor. You know, as a governor, if you can be an effective executive and a governor, I'm sure he could do that job well. But you have to win, and when he gets up there and performs, it's very performative, and it's very like the woke. Florida is where the woke goes to die, and we will. And he's just got an awkward. He's just awkward. It's awkward.
It's not that as much. You should watch John Oliver's piece on him. He seems to have like his character. I would say. He calls into question his character, as obviously he will.
Yeah.
But
I don't know if
he doesn't seem like a very good leader to me. I don't know.
If you look at results in Florida,
he handled COVID. I don't know if he knew what he was doing. He like in retrospect, he ended up being right about it. probably in a lot of ways. It doesn't mean you're like. There's more to governing than being. It's like people need to look at you and feel like you have their best interest in mind.
Not as a governor.
Not that,
as a governor, you're much more solutions based and practically based because you're not running on a national stage. So like,
yeah, but he's running on a national stage now, telling half the country what the way you want to live is destroying the world.
You disagree with him?
Like, he's only going to lead half the country. What's he going to do?
No, I think his argument, if you listen, and I don't know if he's making it well. But the argument is that it's not half the country is woke. It's that woke is this tiny minority of fringe left-wing activists, and most of the country is actually united.
So then why is he talking about it so often?
Because they are. I do agree that there's a real issue with wokeness. I don't know if you.
It's overblown. I think it's way overblown, and it suits his purpose for it.
That
to
could be, but I see it as more of a. The reason I would lean one way versus another, more towards the right than to the left, is that I do think the worst elements of the left are much more ascendant and resonant than the worst elements of the right.
I think they're probably the same. The worst elements of left and right are.
You don't see different. KKK kids television shows and the worst right wing ideas of fascism ascendant in media, academia, culture, but you do see the worst elements of the left ascendant in those areas.
I don't think
the major institutions in the country are lean to the left for the most part.
You would compare like a gay character on a Disney show to a KKK show?
No, I wouldn't do that.
Well, so what are the worst elements of left, like socialism and like Puritanism and cancel and all that?
And just judging everything based on race, judging everything based on equal representation in not under the law, but in like checking off a box. Like these ideas that force people to judge people in this intersectional racial lens as opposed to just as individuals. Like those kinds of ideas, turning people against people, that kind of stuff is embraced much more by the modern sort of widespread left and Democrats in general than the worst elements of the right, which are pretty easily dismissed and aren't embraced by the mainstream. I don't know.
It's changing. I have private conversations with people who say things they wouldn't have said during the BLM marches and stuff. You know, like more critical of that.
But in the institutions, mindset. There was a clip of Vivek on Meet the Press, to go back to Vivek, with Chuck Todd, and Chuck Todd is defending gender affirming care for minors. You know, saying like, don't you think it's the parents' decision to take a 14-year-old or 16-year-old and give them double mastectomies? And that's Chuck Todd defending that on NBC. While Vivek is made to seem like the radical right winger for saying, no, that should be illegal. Just like getting a tattoo before you're 18 is illegal and smoking before you're 18 is illegal. That's the common sense thing that I think most people would agree upon. And Chuck Todd is out there saying, I think children should be doing this. To me, that's wild.
At the same time, though, Chuck Todd got fired. He's no longer the host of Meet the Press because the ratings were probably low, and most people don't want to hear that.
Where we are on the pendulum is interesting, but I think in the current moment, you still have most of academia, most of media, academia, media, and major institutions, even in corporate America, that have a lot of these diversity, equity, inclusion classes that are racial sensitivity classes that I think are not good for culture and society. They're making people view everything through a hyper-racialized lens. And granted, it's a fringe people of activists who believe that, but those ideas are much more embraced and integrated than the worst ideas of the right.
I just think that fear is like 8 to 12 months old, and like DeSantis is running on fears that are stale already. I think his whole thing's gonna start feeling stale. I don't know. Woke doesn't really affect. It doesn't affect me on a day-to-day basis in a way I could see, and I think most people feel that way.
I don't think that's true.
I think
it does affect.
How does it affect you on a day-to-day basis?
How does it affect me on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah.
For one thing, I have to be a lot more careful as far as my kids and what they're exposed to in what I thought was safe places for them to consume whatever it is, children's media, because YouTube, Google, those kinds of Disney Plus, like they all are embracing these ideas. You know, so I have to be more careful in monitoring that in a way I didn't think I'd ever have to be.
That's a good answer.
I've been denied jobs because I don't fit the description of a diverse creative. Many, I've tried to pitch for different things, and they said, listen, to be honest, like right now, a lot of the what they're looking for is not what you fit racially or identity wise. They're looking for more. They're not looking for people who can compose the best music or this or that. It's not based on skills and competence. They're looking for people who fit a certain profile, which I find, well, I'll survive it. It's not the biggest deal, but it's affected me. I'm like,
it's affected me too.
Yeah. So you asked the question. So it's definitely there, and a resonant ideology that's kind of poisoning the way people think about things.
DeSantis, it is.
I'm just saying. And I'm not like, am I complaining about it? Oh, no, but it does concern me, the direction and the tides in which. And it's not like Biden is speaking out against it.
Right.
But DeSantis kind of is, whether he's exaggerating it and going too crazy, whatever. But Biden and Kamala and like Democrats and to the left of them seem to be not distancing themselves from it, but more like celebrating and embracing ideas that I think are really troubling.
You know what TikToks I love? When it's like you think it's going to be an inspirational video. It's like someone getting ready to run, and on the background it's Biden speaking, and it's just him sort of like he's saying something completely nonsensical.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Have you seen those? Oh, he's like, and the caption is like it was 5 a.m. I didn't want to get up, but then I remembered this, and it's Biden like
America's described in one word.
Yeah, something like that. It's like, I just want you to remember. Yeah. So funny. Let's wrap it up here though, because this was
anyway. That's how
this to be a quick one.
That's where I'm at a little bit, and I'm not like saying it's there are people who have it way harder than me, and I have plenty of opportunities and things, and I don't want to discount that, but I'm just looking out on the landscape, and as voters and people who are engaged in these ideas, like you kind of just have to go with what connects with you. So anyway, good.
We didn't get to UFOs. Oh man, we got to talk about UFOs next time.
Next, Riverside. These Riverside ones are for like these should be the Patreons, by the way, when we really get into the.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Just for the folks.
Should we put it up as a Patreon?
Maybe.
Sure. Who knows?
But that kind of defeats the purpose of being
Call
topical.
in. If you want this to be a Patreon, call in.
We went to some controversial areas, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I think I stand by it.
Cool. Maybe we could probably have this out tomorrow.
Okay.
All right.
All right. That's Buckle Up episode 63. The in-betweenest episode. I don't know which way. We have to point in all directions. Okay. Good talking to you, Michael. Let's put this up. All right.
Shabbat shalom.
DeSantis 2024 with Vivek as the running mate. I can't wait.
Bye-bye.